in just before
Oh,
we go
goodness.
live, not just after.
Let me tell you, the supporting listeners group, if you were in that, you
All
would
right,
be
looks like we
just
are live.
regaling and laughter.
At least we are on
Oh,
Facebook. Let's see if it works on YouTube today.
fans,
It'd be a real downer if it decided not to work on YouTube.
if you had been around for the supporting listeners group
Hey, look
just
at
before
that.
this
It's
show
working on
started,
YouTube.
you would be laughing
All
just as
right,
hard,
so
if
let
not harder, than we
us
just were.
get this, share it with this, get all of our housekeeping out of the way so that Steven can do his special presentation. Steven has a special presentation planned for everybody, and I know that my my mother-in-law in particular is going to enjoy it because she
It's
is a
not.
big fan of your presentations.
Well, you see,
She's downstairs watching. You're muted.
I shouldn't be muted. I should not be muted.
Hold on. Maybe you're not muted. Maybe my audio just
Maybe.
switched
Because I'm
itself again,
blabbing.
as it is wont to do.
Yeah. Well, you see, I really need to. I feel about as good as I look today. Thanks to
so everyone else can hear him, but I can't.
Programming. That's good. That's good. I'm glad that I made the presumption that other people could hear me, and like I wasn't just globally muted because I could have just said horrific shit, but I didn't. Anyway, I look feel about as good as I look today, fans. And in order to make it through the podcast, I think you know what we have to do. Because the reason why I'm not feeling so good is because I'm on my probably 80th, 90th, 100th rep or something of like 136 reps of squats that I'm doing this week. And the old dogs are barking. So what I'm going to do is try to fix it. These supple, white, powerful, milky thighs. Just get a little green Paloma all up in there. Thanks to our sponsor at Paloma Verde, Pinche Paloma Verde, chicos, where you can buy your own premium THC-free CBD salve stick and just either you yourself or maybe, get a nice gentleman friend to rub this deliciousness into your tired, powerful thighs so that you can make it through a 9-hour podcast with your friend from the internet.
What if I don't want to have another man rub my thighs?
Well, then I think that you should probably unsubscribe from this podcast because we are all about building community. And if you've ever done like wrestling or any of those sports where they try to build a brotherhood, let me tell you, there's going to be some gentleman friend thigh rubbing going on, and that's just a fucking appetizer. So
tell us about this. Tell us about this. Okay, well, before I have you do that, just so everyone has the exact details, Paloma Verde CBD, they're our delightful, wonderful sponsor. Shout out to Carlos and Vanessa. Go to palomaverdestore.com and use promo code KING. That'll get you 25% off any order over $75. They've got this awesome CBD muscle rub that Steven is so lusciously demonstrating. And they've also got some awesome gummies. They've got a tincture. They've got all kinds of different CBD stuff over there. So if CBD is your jam, which it should be if it's not, if it's your jam, then go make them your new supplier and support the show. As you do that, let them know that we sent you and use promo code KING at checkout. That'll get you 75% off any order over $75. And also, if you sign up for their mailing list, then you get an additional 10% off. So a little, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. There's a whole lot of back scratching and thigh rubbing going on here today.
Hey,
so
yeah, exactly. You rub my thighs, and can't tell you what I'll do.
I can tell you what I'll do, but I'm not going to.
Right. That's supporting listeners.
That's right.
Group.
Supporting listeners content.
Right there. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so looks like we are all live and good to go. So I'm going to close that
live.
window, and I'm going to open this window here so that I can. Oops, that's the wrong one. And
damn, is there 11 people in here already?
Yeah,
breaking a record.
People are hopping up in here quick.
I gotta say, you know, I mean, correlation, causation, but that thigh rubbing, you know what I mean? I think people probably knew that they didn't want to miss the thigh rub action.
Right.
Drop
Yeah.
it, drop it in the. Give the video a like if you're here for the thigh rubs.
Yeah. If you're showing up for the thigh rubs, then give us a like, give us a subscribe, share the show. Particularly if this is the first time that you're listening, make sure you subscribe and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also go follow me on Twitter at RealKingPilled. That's where I do the majority of my internet posting for the time being. I keep saying that I'm going to set up Gab, but like the end of this month has been just absolutely nightmarishly busy, and I just feel like I'm chasing my brain every day. So there's multiple different people that I've left hanging in the middle of conversations, and all of you I think all of them are probably watching, or at least will watch this. So to all of you, the fact I haven't gotten back to you yet, it says nothing about you and it says everything about me. I'm going to get through the rest of this month, and then I'll become a live person again. Yeah, Popular Liberty here says he says I'm alive. He's one of the people. I left him mid conversation because I just if I showed you guys the number of unread messages that I have at any given time across all of my different messaging platforms, it would just I don't know how I do this. I don't know how I manage to have just nonstop conversations going with every single person that I know, but somehow I do, and so. Yeah, I had to put everything on hold so I could get some stuff done, but I'll get that stuff done and then I'll get back to you guys. Anyways, when did Messina become a black guy? When did Messina become a black guy?
I don't know. I don't even know the reference. Is that just like culturally, sort of speaking, or just demeanor?
Our boy Wyman in the chat, Rob, he's asking. We haven't seen Wyman in a few days, so welcome back, man. He says he left a great advertisement for the show on our Lions of Liberty interview. Awesome. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. Go check out the Lions of Liberty interview that I did with Mark Claire. He just dropped it a couple days ago. Just look for Lions of Liberty wherever they are on YouTube or on Facebook, or you can go follow them on Patreon. They've got a Patreon. You can go join it, support it. I'm a supporting listener for them there on Patreon. So go listen to the conversation I had there. We actually touched on some of the stuff that we're going to touch on today, talking about ritual and religion and cult stuff. But anyway, so Rob here in the chat, he wants to know when you became a black guy.
I don't know. I have to, before I could get myself in fucking trouble here, before I answer that question. So I have to know what the angle is before I give an answer.
Johnny, what's up, buddy? Johnny Roque. Oh man, I haven't talked. I need to see. There's another person that I'm sure that the last time I talked to Johnny, I left him hanging mid conversation, and he's a great buddy of mine from high school. One of the first people that really engaged with me as I started thinking about all these different libertarian and political ideas and stuff. I think he might have been the first. Actually, that's true. I just realized it. He was the first ANCAP who I ever discussed ANCAPness with. And he's the one who ultimately gave me the content that I needed to make that conversion finally. So Johnny's in the chat today. What's up, buddy? It's good to see you here. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, apparently I bailed on him. Okay. Popular Liberty says he thought that the little D's had gotten me. Nope. I will not let any little D's near me. Johnny, oh my goodness. Okay, so Johnny introduced me to Rothbard. He also introduced me to Jordan Peterson. Basically, Johnny completely changed my life, and I haven't talked to him in way too long. So I'm going to be reaching out to Johnny after the show here. Okay. Black guy talk. That's what we were talking about. So just before we went live, I told Steven that we were about to go live, and then I got a little notification on my phone. And I'm subscribed to disclose.tv, their Telegram channel, just so I kind of keep up on the regular internet news that's going on. And they basically, as long as I'm subscribed to at least one thing that I get notifications for that tells me about the news, then I'm able to know, like, as long as any sort of emergency came up, I would get it from them. So that leaves me good. So I got a notification from them. It says Ghislaine Maxwell is seen with a black eye and graying hair in first photo since her arrest last year. And so I said, oh no, Ghislaine Maxwell is seen with a black guy. And Steven was like, are we live yet or no?
Yeah, well, I think what we're realizing right now, and this is probably fucking pretty important to keep in mind, but there might be like a buffer where it goes back 20 seconds or so.
Yeah, I hadn't hit the button yet.
Yeah, but yet they still heard it.
Oh, that's true. They may have, yeah. So,
right. Well, evidently.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder. That's very interesting. I wonder why they do that.
Yeah, that is.
That makes me think of like we. It's not uncommon for us to be having uncouth conversations just before we go live. So
no shit.
So I mean, hey, the channel is still here. So we'll see.
Here.
What's up, Carlos? Carlos in the chat. Our Paloma Verde, our green Paloma superstar.
Ah.
All right.
¿Qué onda, carnal?
Righty. Okay, so today it's kind of funny. I was just telling Steven before we went live that when we're doing these live readings of Moldbug pieces, it's very it gets kind of addicting for a lazy podcaster. So someone's trying to do a show like this, and you ever just need some really easy content, just pick something that's interesting and just read through it and comment as you go, because it's like the easiest possible way, especially for someone who's like wants to start a podcast, but they don't know how to do it or don't know what to do. Just pick something that's interesting, especially if you know how to read and you can kind of make listening to you read an interesting thing. If you can do that, then just pick like an article or a book or a chapter of something or whatever, and just sit down and read it and comment as you go. Because at least for me, when I'm reading a book, my mind is just kind of popping with all sorts of different ideas and thoughts as I go, and I usually have to stop and write them down, or I underline, or I'll sit down and I'll get stuck tweeting out a Twitter thread and forget what I was reading. But so that makes for just like the easiest content ever. And if you're not used to this dynamic of getting up on a microphone and just kind of talking and riffing extemporaneously for an hour or two, your mind will just freeze up. You can be totally fine at having a conversation with someone in person and never have an issue. But then if you sit down to have a conversation through the screen, your mind just periodically just wipes itself. Mid-sentence, and you just completely forget what you're talking about.
It is hilarious you're saying this, because like and I'm really trying to get to the point where I just keep my fucking ideas to myself. But anytime I'm out with somebody, like I was out, and I could not just stop railing on and on, just about everything. Just like, we're literally like at like a Chili's or something, and just anytime anyone brings, anything related to current events, it's just stampeding towards, just kind of just anything to do with COVID. It just we'll cover COVID. We're gonna go over the whole year. You know what I mean? If you let Daddy have a root beer or even better, a Dr. Pepper and Fireball. Oh, we're gonna get into some shit right here. Yeah,
it's like those subjects you have to pick the time when you're actually going to talk about them, because it's like, well, we can't do a little bit. We can't talk about a little bit of COVID. We have to talk about the whole thing. So, so it's like, okay, are you signed up for a 5-hour conversation? Because if you're not, then don't get me started, because that's what it's going to be. Okay, so today, what I called today's show, if you aren't already in a cult, you'd better find one, because I think cults get a bad rap, and I wanna shout out all the hardworking cult members out there who are fully honest with themselves about the cult that they're a part of. Because I guess the little secret here would be that every single one of us is already part of a cult to some degree or another, because cults are the most natural thing for human beings. Human beings just naturally form cults because they are very useful tools for binding a society together and helping that society accomplish things. They have a common narrative that they use to overcome difficulty. And so the people who are like, yeah, I'm in a cult, the ones who are really honest about it, they're the ones who are being honest. The rest of us are like, no, cults for other people. Though I'm too smart to be in a cult. If you think you're too smart to be in a cult, that means that you're in a uniquely adaptive cult, because it's such a good cult that you can be a part of it and not realize that you're part of a cult. So one of the biggest cults, if I want to throw out a little bit of low-hanging fruit here and kind of pander to the peanut gallery, one of the biggest cults. I bet it was.
I have a quick question.
Go.
I know I just did it anyway, but like, is there a word that isn't as like weighted as cult? Is there like a synonym that you could throw at the listeners? Okay, all right, cool. I was thinking something along those lines.
Yeah, tribe. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I wanted to get into today is kind of the nature of a cult, where cults come from and how they are derived and what they what how they're derived and what they the sorts of things that they form themselves around and the reason why. So we're actually very familiar with this nature of cults being pretty ubiquitous because we have a word, a very common everyday word that we use all the time that has cult in it, that illustrates the nature of a cult to a degree. And that word is culture. A culture is a cult. It's the nature of a cult. If you are part of a culture, to some degree or another, you're part of a cult. And by a cult, I mean a network or an organization or a tribe or a gang or whatever term you want to use for a group of people who all attach themselves to a common identity, and they buy in to this idea that people within that identity have some sort of obligation to one another, to that is unique. They have an obligation to this group of people that they don't have to others, and that the purpose of this obligation is to further the best interest of that group. So a culture is that just writ large. When you speak of American culture, you're talking about the stories and the rituals and the overarching narrative that Americans tell each other about Americans and what it means to be an American. And so someone who's an American really is someone who participates in American culture. If you don't participate in American culture, then you're kind of not, you're not really an American. And this is where where a big dividing line winds up showing itself, because there's people that are like, well, if you're going to be a part of the cult, you need to be all the way in. You need to be fully committed and fully dedicated and giving it your all. And then others are like, I can just hang out and be here and not really contribute, and I should just get the benefits of the culture. And that's where you see a lot of like political party splits. But
it's really funny you mention this, because like I was seeing a shit ton of like Ayn Rand comments lately, and God, they just quotes and stuff like that, and they just really, God, they're just annoying now, to look at, and it's just this, and I don't know, it's probably somebody that not too far back that I would have been, I guess, somewhat sympathetic to those ideas and stuff like, but it just seems when you look at them now, you can kind of just see how they would turn 99% of people off immediately. I mean, they just sound so selfish, and it kind of just gets to that idea of just like, I have the right to be as rich as I want and my property and it's just like, you're missing something there, that you're going to turn just so many people off.
Dude, here's the thing about Randianism is that it's so she used the term selfish, and selfish means like self-interest. So she tried to protest that selfish doesn't mean selfish in the traditional sense. But here's the problem. You're not the one who decides the definition of the word unless you literally invented the word. So our buddy Popular Liberty, he invented this word archetropism. He completely out of whole cloth. If you Google archetropism, all you're going to get is results that he gets to define what that word means. Anarchy is not a word that even Murray Rothbard coined. So if he wants to say, well, this is actually what anarchy is, he can try to be persuasive. He can try to get people to believe that. But if he is not persuasive, if people aren't buying it, he doesn't get to say, well, you're using the wrong definition of it. So everybody has a kind of the colloquial definition of anarchy. Well, that's what the definition of anarchy is then. If you want to try to use it and you want to say, actually, it means this thing, people might go along with that if you're persuasive enough, or if you make a good case. They might be, oh, hey, I share your opinion there. But by and large, words are just signals that we use to convey meaning to each other. So the signal, the actual definition of the signal, depends upon the person who's receiving it, not the person who's sending it. Because if you're sending a signal and the person who's receiving it is receiving a different signal than the one you're intending to send, that's not on him, that's on you. Because you're sending a bad signal. You need to fix your signal. So if your signal has a bunch of loaded terms with it that other people don't understand or don't hear where you're coming from, that's on you. If people aren't buying what you're selling, you have to fix your sales pitch. So that's a long way of saying that Rand was kind of silly to say selfish, and to try to protest that selfish actually means is actually a good thing. I think she may have done it to be provocative or whatever. But anyway, so So the thing about being self-interested in a Randian sense is that it's actually a very it's a sacrificial or empathetic or other oriented thing, kind of ironically. It's that a society can't sustain itself if nobody is looking out for themselves, because humans are natural. And she wasn't even saying this as a normative thing. She was saying this descriptively. She was saying humans are self-interested by like that's just the nature of them. It's like humans are bipedal, and they generally have 10 toes and 10 fingers, and they're self-interested. This is just the way that human beings are the way they function. This is the way they tick. And because of that, then it's important that you first and foremost look out for your own interests, because everyone else first and foremost is going to look out for theirs. And if you don't look out for your own interests, it's going to fall on someone else to take care of you. Someone else is going to have to do it for you. So it's like the airline where you when the mask, the oxygen mask drops down, they say put it on yourself before you put it on anybody else. That's not because if you do that, you're not being selfish. You're being selfish in the Randian sense, but not in the colloquial sense. By doing that, you're actually doing a service for others. Because if you just start trying to help other people, eventually you're going to pass out, and then they're going to be stuck with someone who's passed out that they have to take care of. And then you can no longer pull your own weight. So it's actually an other-oriented thing to be selfish in the Randian sense. But then you get these, the internet neckbeards who just hear selfish, and they want to be edgelords, and it's like she's giving them an excuse to be a bunch of self-absorbed jerk-offs, so that's how they act. But anyways, I think I might have interrupted you. Did you have something you wanted to say related to that?
No, that's great. And since we hit neckbeards and self-absorbed jerk-offs, I just I love you so much, I swear. I just a little.
You can't rub my thighs.
Little tidbit. Oh, the hell, I can't. The little tidbit for the listeners here. I believe the name for the show came about when your beloved host said in a message to me, "It's time to king pill these neckbeards."
That's right.
And I was just such a great sentence. And of course, anyone who listens to it and puts up with us is probably not one of the neckbeards that we were trying to king pill. Is somebody who's sort of maybe already sympathetic to whatever we're going to be talking about. But that phrase I just think needs to be in the world.
Yes, I king pilling neckbeards.
Right, and so into that kind of circling back to the words and phrases, even if you make up a word, it doesn't mean that it's yours and you get to keep it. I mean, people could take over words all the time. It certainly happened with agorism.
Right. Right.
To the point where, I think.
And the wise thing.
A video sort of being like, I'm not using this word anymore.
Yeah.
Because this is this is a go to jail word now.
And he's doing the right thing there. He recognizes that he doesn't have the power or the influence to be the one who dictates what the word means. He just recognizes that other people have that power. Other people get to dictate what agorism means. So he's not going to use it anymore, because when he uses it to describe himself, he conveys a different idea to other people than he's wanting to. And really the worst position you can find yourself in is I am a such and such, but not the type of such and such you're thinking of. It's actually a different sort of such and such. What a such and such means to me is yada yada. You've lost. You're done. That's just I think the reason why that's so catastrophic is because what it shows is a fundamental lack of empathy. Because if you don't have the empathy to recognize the relationship of yourself to other people, then basically any other idea that you come up with probably isn't going to be of great value. Like, this is the thin slicing thing that's happening in people subconsciously, and why they're just going to blow you off if that's the way that you approach them. This is all about persuasion and influence and communication. These are just fundamentals of human interaction. You have to understand you have to be able to step outside your own self and view other people and recognize the way that other people view you, and realize that the way other people view you, which is your reputation, or you might call it your brand, that's your responsibility. if your reputation or your brand is not what other people is not, if your reputation or brand with other people is not what you want it to be, that's not the responsibility of other people. That's the responsibility of you. And if it needs to be fixed, it's up to you to fix it. And then if you're going to fix it, you need to actually have an understanding of cause and effect. So if I do XYZ, then it's going to have ABC effect on other people. So if you recognize that XYZ is going to have ABC effect and you don't want to have ABC effect, you want to have HIJ effect, then you need to figure out whatever it is that you need to do to have HIJ effect. You know, so this is what I mean when I say that these sorts of things are engineering problems. They're not moral problems. Human beings are very predictable beasts. They're actually pretty easy to understand once you get yourself in the right frame of mind. Once you realize, once you rid yourself of the indoctrination of the cult that we live in, that the majority of us have been raised in. Once you back yourself out of that, then I think what is I don't remember the analogy that Moldbug uses, something about like a brain worm. But once you've extracted that worm from your brain and you realize there's this big gaping void there, you'll also recognize that there's a whole bunch of really obvious stuff that fits into it perfectly. And human beings are actually very easy to understand. It's very easy to see why we've gotten to where we are today, and it's easy to see more or less where we're going. The question is the details. How exactly is it going to play itself out? And in order to understand that, you have to understand the way that people are wired, the way that humans arrange themselves in groups, and why they arrange themselves that way. So that's kind of the lead-in for what I wanted to discuss here today. So let me pull up. We already did the ad read. So let me pull up this Twitter thread that I did earlier, a couple days ago. So the first thing was, I tweeted, without a word to describe a concept, we will forget that concept exists. So this goes to the subject we were just talking about here, about the difference between the word, the meaning of the word the meaning you want your words to have and the meaning that they actually have. So if we talk about, one of the best examples of this is inflation. So when people talk about inflation, it could either mean a general rise in prices. That's one definition of inflation. It could also mean a expansion of the money supply. So this is a little technical economic thing, kind of, but if you have $10, so just imagine you're in a world where dollars don't exist, and someone snaps their fingers and they invent $10, or let's say $100. So you have $100 now. $100 exist. Through the course of interacting with other people, you'll establish what the actual value is of each one of those $100. And it'll be based on what other people are willing to give you in return for getting one of those dollars. Through the course of the interaction, you'll establish that value. And so then $1 will have a value. So let's say $1 has the value of one apple. Then, if you were to somehow snap your fingers again and invent $10 more, now there's $110. So each individual dollar is now going to be worth less than one apple, most likely because there's now more dollars to go around, so they're not as scarce, they're easier to come by, and so there's more moving through society. So that can be a definition of inflation. Because of that, then it will cost you more than $1 to buy an apple. So the price of an apple has gone up. This would be an effect of inflation. So was the inflation the price of the apple going up, or was the inflation the additional $10 being invented? The word inflation can be used to describe both of those things. But when an entire society collectively decides that inflation only refers to the dynamic of the dollar, of the apple becoming more expensive, then you lose that other concept, which is actually the source of the inflation. It wasn't that the apples just magically got more expensive just for no reason whatsoever. They got more expensive because more dollars came into existence. So there's more dollars relative to apples. And it's just a natural cause and effect. So there's multiple things that are happening here. You have the actual items themselves, the actual phenomena, so the actual phenomenon of inflation, and then you have the meaning of inflation. These two things exist separately from one another. So the meaning just kind of exists out there. And then as humans, as we try to understand the world around us, we encounter this concept and we want to communicate that concept to someone else. So we create special mouth sounds that we say, when I use these special mouth sounds, what I'm referring to is this dynamic. So that every time I want to describe that dynamic, I don't have to sit down and explain the whole thing. I can just say inflation, and people say, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. This is where language is derived from. This is how language develops. It's a shortcut, so that I don't have to explain these things over and over again. I don't have to demonstrate them over and over again. I can just create a shortcut. We all agree this shortcut means that, and then we move forward. So over a period of time, sometimes the word will either evolve to mean something else, leaving behind the original concept, or the word will be forgotten altogether. There's certain languages that have different words that other languages don't. There's like German, for example, they have this thing where they just, if they want to describe a subject, they just cram a bunch of words together. And then they're able to describe a new subject because it's maybe before you had 3 different subjects and you cram them all together, and now you have a new subject that's made of those 3 subjects. And they're able to basically invent a new idea because of that. So over the course of as human societies evolve and as they move through time, you get this dynamic, this kind of like ever-evolving dynamic of words and their meanings shifting with respect to one another. Eventually, you may lose the word that describes a specific concept, and when that word is gone, that people will forget that concept. They'll forget that concept exists because they don't have the word to attach to it, because the word was the shortcut. Without the shortcut, you might forget that it's there. Were you going to say something?
No, just like good example, bad example, I can't tell, but even just the word literally, they changed the definition of literally to become its opposite, because people used it in such a way, just for like dramatic effect or whatever. But yeah, I think officially, if you look up literally in the dictionary, it will effectively mean not literally.
Right. Yeah, it means the exact opposite. Yeah, the words, and so the meaning of a word is not objective. This is the same for liberty, for freedom, for anarchist, libertarian. All these words, conservative, all these words evolve over time. Their meaning evolves over time. The meaning can shift and move around, but the word stays the same. And I happen to believe, this is unfalsifiable, but I happen to believe that every single disagreement among human beings comes down to a product of disagreeing of using, because language is limited, because words are limited, it comes down to people speaking past each other. If it was possible to automatically have, when I say this word, I'm able to by magic automatically implant my precise meaning in the other person's mind. Like if we were able to derive that, I fundamentally believe that all disagreements would disappear, that we would realize that we all want the same thing, that we're all fundamentally driving toward the same thing. We just all have different, or not all, but there's a whole bunch of different ideas for how to get there or for what that would look like. Ultimately, everyone wants to live in a prosperous society where they're safe, where their family is safe, and where they have at their disposal everything that they might want to have. I think that.
Well, I just like to say I couldn't disagree more, Matthew. I think you're the racist homophobe.
Actually, you see, homophobe actually has a very specific meaning.
So, I don't know who'd be afraid of him. I don't know, but not me.
Right.
I think that was I maybe remember overhearing that that conversation in an unironic, like just spoken unironically. Someone kind of breaking down the word.
That homophobia means like a phobia meaning being for, oh my goodness. So yes. Like it was just autism at work. Oh my God.
Kind of funny. I'm almost positive it was in Massachusetts, which you can kind of like color it the right way. Just like, yeah, kid, I don't fucking know. I mean, not really got any problems, but fucking not afraid, just.
Oh, that's great.
See it, channel.
Oh, okay. Hold on just a second. It's hot as hell in here, so I need to turn this fan on. I'll be right back.
It's hot as hell in here. Oh no, it's not time yet. It's not quite time yet. Oh, this is interesting right here. This is un-Matthew like. I mean, it must be hot as blazes for a professional broadcaster, Matthew Erickson, to abandon his post. So that air is going to just be hitting on all cylinders right now. I'm sure you are a beefy individual, by the way. Look at those. That sort of you have a real barrel-chested husband, Miss Amy, if I may make this observation. And also, while we're here, this whole push, I just have to say, not that people that are attracted to the message of liberty lovers, as we like to call them on the show, tend to be annoying, contrarian, pains in the asses by nature. But everyone kind of, pushing for an audio format, you'd be really missing out. The visual really is something, and God is disagreeing with me right now by sending a train. But I just like to give my 2 cents.
Well, see, that's the problem with the audio, because when the audio is there, well, the train messes. The train doesn't mess up the visuals at all. I mean, at least we hope it won't, because that would be kind of a problem.
It's kind of funny. More and more each day, I pray that this train will just drive straight through my fucking apartment.
Did you mute yourself? Your audio went away, but I think the video and audio
I did
are out of sync.
I did mute myself because some of the conductors tend to be pretty obnoxious with the horn. They really overdo it, and I never know like who we're gonna get.
They're like me. If I ever got to drive a fire truck, I would just be sitting there just laying on the horn and the siren the whole time. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I'd be in back with all those hot firefighters, but thank God I'm muted.
You guys heard it here, folks. Steven wishes he was back with all the hot firefighters. And in this case, hot firefighters means exactly what you think it means. All right. So anyways, so back to this tweet here. So without a word to describe a concept, we'll forget that concept exists. I've had this happen multiple times. Where I can't think of an example right offhand here, which I should have written one down when it happened to me last. Maybe I will going forward. But where I encounter, especially as I've been reading this whole neo-reactionary stuff, so Nick Land and Mencius Moldbug and so various other thinkers who are describing these ideas, and they're describing really they're pretty old ideas. They're ideas that have been around for a long time, but they seem completely new. But they're all very simple. It's very like super straightforward and seems really obvious once someone presents it to me. And I'm like, how did we lose these ideas? How did we lose how does something this simple or this obvious get lost to history? Well, I mean, it's kind of obvious, I guess, because wealthy, powerful people feel like they're in a better place when people aren't thinking and talking about those things. And that doesn't necessarily have to be a conspiracy. It can just be just incentives that the people who have wealth and power are the ones who ultimately will dictate the conversations that people have by and large at the popular level. And so if a certain idea doesn't fit the vision of the world that they want, then people aren't going to talk about it, or the ones who do talk about it aren't going to get major airtime. But when I realized this, when I realized that people, that our ability, like we think in words, and so without the word, we'll lose the idea. And so that makes me think, how many words have we forgotten? How many concepts have we forgotten that are out there that exist? There could be some, the answer to all the world's problems could be out there somewhere, and we've just forgotten it or we haven't found it yet. But how many are there? We have this tendency. This is a very liberal, in the technical sense, a very liberal thought, is that we are at the cusp of human history. We're at the pinnacle of human history. We are the absolute summation of human evolution. All of human history has all been a gradual build-up to this moment, and we have access to the most knowledge. We are the most technologically advanced humans that ever existed. This linear view of history that everything's getting better and better. Progress is by definition is good, and the future is going to be better than the past, just by definition. All these things are this is like the Whig view of history, and it's this idea of time being linear. Whereas in reality, time is cyclical, and things go up and down and back and forth, and we kind of constantly keep cycling through through epochs that are all driven by the same phenomena, because humans keep forgetting things. It's like we forget something, and then we learn it the hard way. We relearn it, and so then we'll create an institution. We'll create some sort of a way of reminding ourselves of that. We're like, wow, when we didn't realize this very important truth, we tore ourselves apart and society collapsed and millions of people died. So we want to make sure we remember these very important things. So we're going to embed them in institutions. We're going to embed them in rituals and in traditions and practices that will be sure to pass this knowledge on from generation to generation. And then eventually it gets filtered out and people forget, and we go right back to do the exact same thing all over again. So this way, there was two sayings. One says that those who, I think it was George Bernard Shaw, said that those who forget history are doomed to repeat it. But then someone else said that history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And I like that one better. So, okay, so back to this tweet. So I said, without a word to describe a concept, we'll forget that concept exists. So how many concepts exist for which we don't yet have the words, and how many have we forgotten? So when we look at ourselves as being like the ultimate evolution of human beings, what's the actual truth? Like, of all the possible knowledge that's out there, do we have 92% of it? Do we have 73% of it? Or do we have 7.3% of it? Like, of all the possible knowledge that human beings could have, what do we actually have access to? What have we actually achieved? And what is left for us to find? I think that it's much closer to the 7.3 number. It's just kind of an intuition that I have. I think that there's much more that we don't know than that we do. I think that I used to kind of buy into this Whig view of history and this linear timeline, and people and us being, the best, smartest, most knowledgeable humans that ever lived. And technology was a really good thing in this sense. But I've since actually come to believe that technology in a lot of ways is a crutch. Technology is us using tools to try to recreate abilities that humans once had, capacities that humans once had. We need like special devices to put down all of these ideas into. We need books, and we see this as this was a fantastic evolution that they people invented books, and so you could keep all these ideas in a book. But we know that human memories used to be much better than they are now. This is why stories developed the way they did. Is people told stories. They embedded these ideas in a story that they then memorized, and they passed it on down through the generations. People could remember just unfathomable amounts of information when it was embedded in a story. Now our memories are shit, and we can hardly even remember our own phone number anymore. We've got it all put onto this device that we carry around with us. But is that device actually a tool that's improving our life, or is it a crutch that could we once do everything that this device does for us, but we've forgotten how? So something, I don't know what it is, but something about that mindset is very compelling to me. And once you start seeing the human race that way, you start seeing just how primitive we really are. You start seeing how lacking in capacity and how simple, how childish our view of the world is now, and how much more could possibly be out there that we don't get to see, and we don't get to learn about all that stuff because we're bogged down in goofy things like how many people are watching the Grammys or whatever it was recently, which apparently it's super low, which I think is kind of cool because it was the Golden Globe, the Oscars, that's what it was. I think it's cool that the viewership is way down because people aren't paying any more attention to it. But the question I ask is, what are they paying attention to instead? Because they didn't stop paying it. They didn't just sit and stare at their wall for an hour. What did they do instead? And this gets into this idea of stories that I wanted to talk about today. That the role that stories play for people, and the rituals and traditions that we build for ourselves around stories. I was telling Steven just before we went live that Carl Jung said that people don't have ideas, ideas have people. But the most powerful kind of idea is a story. A story is a really powerful idea, and the stories that persist, the stories that keep getting retold, are the ones that have the most powerful ideas. And some ideas that get embedded in stories are so powerful that all of the people who hear that story, they decide that they want to change the way that they're going to live their life going forward. Before they heard this story, they saw the world differently. After they heard the story, they saw the world completely differently, and they decided to change the way that they were going to behave. They were going to let this story change their life. And they decide that they want to spend all of their time, or as much time as possible, around other people who not only heard that story, but were affected in the same way by that story. And those group of people, what they do is they form a religion. That's what a religion is. It's a group of people who have all formed themselves around a common story. That story, in virtually every case, that story is a story about history. It describes something that happened in the past. It's like a more or less a factual retelling of events, or at least someone's perspective of events. And that story is a tool. That tool is used. It's a story. That tool is a story of the past that's used to predict the future. This is the role that religions ultimately play in human society. Is everyone binds themselves around a story of the past so that they know how to handle the future. They know how to. They have an operating system that will facilitate them succeeding through whatever encounter whatever thing they may encounter, whatever event they may find themselves within. They now have a story that describes the reality that they exist in, that gives them purpose and meaning going forward. So there was another tweet thread that I did here that was kind of sparked by that same thought. And I want to look here real quick at the comments because it looks like some people have some kind of interesting stuff here. So,
things are popping off today.
Yeah, we've got good. My wife says that you and I are going to be swapping spit in the shower before too long.
Let me tell you, Amy, that is your luckiest scenario.
This is getting very uncomfortable. I don't know if I want to keep putting up with this. She also says that I'm sexy and that I've been bench pressing a giant baby. So I'm fine with that. Josiah here said, alas, the postmodern project of deconstructing language, really undermining concepts, i.e. the hierarchy of meaning that comprises reality, yielding pure chaos. There you go. That's the role of the postmodern impact on the world. I was going to say that's the role of postmodernism, but I don't necessarily think that's true. I think that's the role of postmodernists, people who have who consider themselves postmodernists. They've set to this role of deconstruction, which is the actual absolute pinnacle of leftism. Like we've talked on the show before about how right is order, which is good, and left is chaos, which is evil, and that the state feeds off of chaos because chaos provides them an opportunity to step in and impose their own form of order. So leftism is fundamentally about deconstructing hierarchies, about tearing down, flattening things, and making everybody equal. It's about egalitarianism. So it just is. If you understood that, then you would have reckoned. I mean, this could have been centuries or millennia ago. If you understood that dynamic and you understood the way that this progresses through society, that everything is just perpetually moving more and more leftward, you would have been able to predict the rise of an ideology or a philosophy like postmodernism, which is explicitly dedicated toward deconstruction, to like deconstructing things, tearing things down. It's just leftism. It's the best word possible for a leftist. But then he said, to have forgotten all concepts would render all concepts equal. That's a really, really fascinating point. I love that. So meaning, that when a concept has meaning, that means you've taken that concept from the pool of all undefined concepts where things are all equally undefined, and you've pulled it out and you've defined it. You've attached a meaning to it. You've defined it and you've now created a little bit of order. So meaning is the process of creating order in the world. It's taking the chaos of undefined, flattened, equal nothingness, equal chaos, and creating a hierarchy of meaning from which you derive value that gives you purpose. this is further substance. I hope Popular Liberty's still watching, because this is further substance of that substantiates this idea of order being by definition necessarily good, and chaos is by definition necessarily evil, or it's evil in the sense that it's not good. And then people who promote chaos are evil. And this is where anarchists have gone wrong. The anarcho-capitalists specifically, their focus on freedom, their focus on the autonomy of the individual is fundamentally the promotion of chaos. The natural impact of all of this, the natural evolution of it, is going to be toward nonsense, be toward the complete deconstructing of everything meaningful. Because once you say that the individual is sovereign, you have now disempowered yourself from ever being able to make any sort of absolute claim toward any sort of truth. You've now made truth relative, and you've turned it into a might makes right game, which is fundamentally what it is all the time. Like in the course of human interaction, everything comes down to might makes right. The people who have the might will always decide what is considered right. They're not going to decide it for all of eternity, but they're going to decide it for here and now on this earth. So if you have any sort of a belief in a law, if you have this idea of that there's property rights and the non-aggression principle and all of that, you're describing an absolute right-wing world. You're describing a world of absolute order where property rights are absolutely enforced. But that's a really fascinating idea from Josiah, that to have forgotten all concepts would render all concepts equal, which is the postmodern postmodern ethos. Then Popular Liberty says, if you can't repel chaos and someone else does, then their order applies to you. Order is ownership. Chaos is anti-ownership. Yeah. Okay. So, sorry, I realize that things are a little bit scatterbrained here, folks, but I'm using this episode as a way to kind of try to think through some of these things and talk through some of these ideas, because I found that once, I don't know, for whatever reason, sitting here and talking these things out is a good way to structure them in my mind and get some of these ideas arranged in a sensical, in a logical way that has some sort of meaning. So I appreciate you guys bearing with us as we talk through all of this, and I think that I was gonna say something else, but not for now. Okay, so this other Twitter thread that I did. So I said someone had replied to my tweet I just read about the without a word to describe a concept, we'll forget that concept exists. And he posted a screenshot from the movie Excalibur from 1981 with a quote. It said, it's this guy in a metal skull cap, and he says, "Remember it well then, this night, this great victory, so that in the years ahead you can say, I was there that night with Arthur the King, for it is the doom of men that they forget." And this is exactly the dynamic that they were just talking about here in the comments, that order is meaning. Meaning and order are synonymous, and that things that have no meaning, things that are meaningless, are all equally lost in the soup, in the undefined ocean of chaos. And when we forget something, it slips back into chaos. Listen to Jordan Peterson with that in mind, that chaos is everything that you've forgotten, is everything that you're not thinking about, everything that doesn't have order or meaning associated with it. So that sparked a bunch of thoughts for me. So I ran through this thread, and I think that this will be illustrative for what I'm trying to get at here today. So if anybody here I'd be curious to see anybody in the chat here who has ever had a psychedelic experience. Ideally one that was brought on by some sort of a substance, but it's possible to have psychedelic experiences even without any sort of substance. So just let me know if you've experienced something like that, just out of curiosity.
I smoked Newports for a couple weeks in high school.
Was that psychedelic for you?
I'm pretty sure. I would say, yeah.
Is it like the effect of nicotine on a young brain?
It tasted like way different than my normal mouth.
Yeah.
It changed. Like I was like tasting all this weird, flavors and stuff like that.
Huh.
So I'm pretty sure that, yeah. I don't know if I ever get on Rogan, we'll probably trade like trip stories or whatever.
Yeah, his DMT story or Newport story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For any so
I guess I could have put that in the chat, but I just figured since I've got the mic, I might as well share it with all the fans.
For a second here, I thought that there was something about I've never smoked Newport, so I thought that there was something about them that you were referencing, but you're just shitposting.
No, there's something about them. I almost went I went and I almost went and like bought like a couple packs today.
Yeah.
Just to have them. Or yeah, it's kind of funny. Because I don't know. I don't really follow like when people talk about Biden's doing all this like goofy shit. I just can't be bothered. I'm doing a real monster of a squat cycle in the gym, and it just I'm ignoring like my own personal problems that are way bigger than Biden banning Newports. But I did kind of pick that up over the past couple of days. And I was like, maybe I'm just gonna buy some to have them.
I didn't know he was banning them.
Or I'm sure. I mean, when people say ban, I don't know if they mean ban. But yeah, there's something going on with Newports that I vaguely paid attention to for half a second. I'm sure the commenters will know.
The guy who said that if you don't vote for me, you ain't black is now talking about banning Newports.
It writes itself.
We live in the most fantastic world. What would you say?
Well, someone in the comments will, I'm sure, have like the actual, story behind it or whatever. And I'm sure that like a Tim Pool headline will come through.
Oh God.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting. I mean, satirists right now are just probably having a real bear of a time. I mean, I think that maybe that's why all the commentary is coming from satirists, because they're just so mad that basically, reality has taken their previous occupation away of making satire.
Well,
and so now they just have
the Babylon Bee is just I don't know how they do it, but they are constantly stepping up their game. Everything is better every month out of them.
They're so good. They're just so good. And every once in a while, I'll kind of see my like sort of lefty, friends share something just because it's just kind of undeniable. What they're saying, and just for a couple of I think what they're like Catholic or something like that, and that's sort of like the root of their where they're coming from, but just to sort of have that be so widely accepted, just where humor has kind of almost totally died, in like comedy is getting applause breaks and stuff like that. They really are just evolving to somehow still be hilarious. My favorite one recently was when they said that chaos breaks out as Chris Hansen steps on stage at the Oscars. I'd like you all to have a seat. Pretty good, man.
Oh my God, that's just yeah. To someone who's actually capable of processing humor, because just they've got all of the material in the world that they could ever possibly want. The whole Trump administration was just perfect material for anyone. It was one of the funniest periods of my life. Being able to watch the freaking president of the United States saying and doing the stuff that he was doing. It was absolutely fantastic. But of course, the world is full of these humorless bastards, both the modern neolibs that just everything is super serious no matter what. It's just there's a difficult trying time and you cannot make a joke about anything. And then the libertarians who are the libertarians who are just absolutely bent out of shape about statism and everything. Oh, you can't laugh about Trump, he's a statist. It was just such a great time for those who I said before that the Babylon Bee is at the time I said it's the most effective right-wing institution in the country. Now, I would say it's one of the most effective right-wing institutions in the country. There's a bunch of others that are on the rise, but yeah, you weren't joking. Yeah, Biden's talking about banning menthols. Period, not just Newports.
Yeah, maybe the same fan sent that to you that did to me, but yeah, Biden administration this week is expected to propose a ban on menthol cigarettes, a move backed by civil rights groups that say Black Americans, capital B, capital A, are hurt by the industry's aggressive marketing of the product. The Washington Post reported on Wednesday. Can you even market cigarettes? And also, even if you could market cigarettes, do you have to market menthols, or is it that they're just fucking delicious? You don't have to. No one marketed that, to me. I'm not a capital B, capital A, but still, I mean, they're just yummy. Am I wrong, fans? What did you smoke? Let's hear it in the comments.
Did it say actually that? So the purpose of this, the Biden administration is expected to propose a ban on menthol cigarettes, a move backed by civil rights groups that say Black Americans are hurt by the industry's aggressive marketing of the product. So the purpose of banning menthols is explicitly to try to protect Black Americans. This is amazing. Yeah. This is absolutely fantastic. Also, this is a great way to. So this is Reuters. So this is supposed to be, it's ostensibly unbiased, and it says that's a great way for how they tell a story to you. So that they are by ostensibly just passing on facts to you. What they're doing is they're telling you a story to get you to buy into that story and to live your life according to that story. So they say the Biden administration this week is expected to propose a ban on menthol cigarettes. The Washington Post reported on Wednesday. That would be the factual reporting of events. Those are the events that are worth reporting. However, they slip in. They have this between the two commas. They slip in a little bit of education, a little bit of indoctrination. This is them training you what you're supposed to believe. They say a move backed by civil rights groups. Civil rights groups. Oh, well, who has a problem with civil rights groups? Civil rights groups they're civil rights groups. Nobody could have a problem with civil rights groups. The move is backed by civil rights groups that say Black Americans are hurt by the industry's aggressive marketing of the product. So it's the civil rights groups, and they say that Black Americans are hurt. This should be implicitly recognized. If Black Americans are being hurt, this is a problem. This is something that the president needs to step in on. They're hurt by the industry's aggressive marketing of the product. So it's not just marketing, it's aggressive marketing. The industry's aggressive marketing of the menthol. You see, if it wasn't for the industry's aggressive marketing of menthols, Black Americans wouldn't be hurt by them. But unfortunately, according to the Biden administration, Black Americans aren't capable of looking out for their own interests. They're suckered in by the evil, aggressive marketing industries. Therefore, they need to propose a ban on menthol cigarettes. So just in that one sentence, the first sentence of it contains so much meaning. And we've been conditioned to just recognize, this is just kind of how it is. This is just how people talk about these things. This is just the way the news media, they're just trying to get all the relevant facts out there. They could have just as easily said, the Biden administration this week is expected to propose a ban on menthol cigarettes, a move opposed by, whatever economists who say that this will do whatever. You can put whatever you want in there, but they could have something there that's critical of it. The fact that they don't have anything critical of it is implicit acknowledgement and support of it. And this is Reuters. This isn't a like the press secretary's office. This is Reuters. And that should tell you that Reuters is the press secretary's office. The fourth estate is part of the government. Formally it's not. Formally it's in an oppositional role to the government because it's our job to hold them responsible. Informally, actually, the media is not only part of the government, but it's the most influential part of the government because this is a government that is ostensibly run by popular opinion. What tools do you use to influence popular opinion? Does popular opinion just kind of like evolve? Is it just emergent? No. Yeah, anyone knows that popular opinion is coached. It's trained. It's educated.
Cultivated.
It's cultivated. There you go. Popular opinion is cultivated by the universities, the media, Hollywood, and every other thing that you see on TV. It's the most massive brainwashing campaign that has ever been perpetrated on a human being. is the takeover, the Mockingbird takeover of the press, of TV shows, of movies, of Hollywood, everything. All of the way that the American intelligence community completely took that over and has then used it to coach exactly whatever opinions they want into people is remarkable. And so then from that framing, then you recognize that an election isn't about the American people showing up to make their choice. It's about it's a test. This is the test at the end of the quarter. The quarter ends, and it's time for you to come tell us how effective our teaching has been. How well are you learning? Are you listening? Are you hearing what we're telling you? Are you now giving the answers that you've been instructed and trained to give? If you vote for the wrong things, if you make the wrong selections on the ballot, well, that means that we need to change the way that we're communicating with you. We need to make ourselves more explicit. This is what you're supposed to believe. This is what you're not supposed to believe. And the greatest thing about Trump was that he revealed that game. He laid that bare. He pulled the curtain back and he laid bare that was what was happening. Other people had figured it out. I mean,
Twice.
Yarvin was writing about exactly this in 2007. And there was people before then who were describing it. People were describing this exact thing in the 1800s, that the press operated this way. People were talking this way centuries ago. This is the way the press has always operated. It's just now we have the perfect set of circumstances for it to be the most influential thing that governs the entire world. The entire world all bends the knee to the American press and university system. And it is the government. It is the heart of the regime. We are governed effectively by Harvard. Harvard is the government, and it expresses its will through the media and Hollywood and the universities.
Sort of on an ever-shortening delay, right?
Right. It's getting it's getting to the point where it's like they don't even need to, because ultimately that's not even the source of it. It's not even just Harvard. Well, where does Harvard come from? Harvard has an endowment. Harvard is supported. Harvard and the culture is such that everyone wants to go to Harvard. Going to Harvard is like the ultimate attainment for someone. It's like no parent can be prouder of their child than if their child gets into Harvard. This is the way it's been, at least. It's no longer that way going forward, which I predicted. I predicted this a few years ago, that eventually having a university degree was going to be seen as a liability in a potential employee, and employers were going to begin to hire against people with a university degree. Because if you have a university degree, that tells me two things. First of all, you make poor financial decisions. And second of all, you're probably going to be coming in fully loaded with a whole bunch of malware, of intellectual malware, that's going to make you a liability to my company. You're going to have all sorts of crazy ideas that you want the company to operate this way or that way, and you're going to be trying to unionize, or you're going to be spreading your stupid communist bullshit around all the employees, and you're going to be instead of working and being productive and doing what I contractually what you are contractually obligated to do for me, you're going to do a whole bunch of other stuff, and then you're going to act like I'm the one who's in the wrong. So we're getting to that point now where people are starting to hire away from universities and avoid people who have a university degree, and that's going to be ugly. There's going to be a rough stretch here, because you're going to get a lot of people. You already have a lot of people who are tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, who were promised the moon if they went and incurred all of that debt, and now they're going to have nothing to show for it, and in fact, they're going to be treated like a pariah. Not
to make this about me, but I'm not hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt because I was really fucking smart and I got a great financial aid package, financial aid package. I almost got
the financial aid package too.
Almost, but by the grace of God, that's where those menthols came in.
Steven has financial aids.
Yeah. Well, actually, I do now have financial aids, but that might be we could make a different show about that probably. But man, I was realizing that I find myself in a particular no man's land with respect to sort of where everything is at, where everything is very revealed now. You know what I mean? Where like college is just very much it's like, okay, yeah, we sort of get it. College is not only a financial trap, but also one thing that I like to do if I talk to anyone in college and like they're very happy about writing a paper or getting published, for whatever. I always ask what the topic is, and when in doubt, it will. I listen to the very long title, and I wait for either to relate to climate change or some sort of intersectional kind of woke, connection that it's going to make. Right.
Right.
It doesn't matter like what they're almost outside of STEM. I haven't talked to anybody like in STEM for a while, but I bet it's just like getting there too. But anyway, I was thinking, okay, so here we are. Everything's like very naked right now, but it's not as naked as it was, or it's more naked than it was, 20 years ago, when I, entered school. And it's just like, man, if I was born 20 years ago, like I just really, would have been able to sort of maybe dodge this and sort of just kind of, it would have been sort of just more, evident that, yeah, you're probably designed to be living in the middle of nowhere somewhere where, probably 10 to 20 years from now. But I went to college and now I have none of the skills that would be required to do that. Right. And I was just kind of thinking, it's like, man, if whoever was born, 20 years after me, just like they've got a real sort of obvious picture of what's going on right now. And so, it's just like, oh yeah, maybe there's just going to be a whole sort of generation of people who, pick a trade and just, become like masterful at it. And, sort of that's going to be the seeding for, sort of new independent communities and stuff like that. It doesn't change how fucked I am personally, but in just terms of any kind of hope for the future in general. I thought of that just yesterday, where just things became just very obvious very quickly.
Yeah. How does it make you feel?
Great. Yeah. At night, I'm going to get scrap metal and just sort of like get the train tracks to point like straight into my living room. Just a little bit at a time. And just one day, just flip the switch and maybe it would be great if it could just happen while we were doing the podcast. It was like, oh, here's that train again, and I'm just here. Like, yeah, that would be great. That'd be great ratings.
You're just the last thing you see before your camera freezes is just you wide-eyed with the train coming right at your face. We'll finally go viral.
Yeah, there it is.
I got a shout out to Rob in the chat. He said, I said something about these people coming out of college with a bunch of intellectual malware installed in their brains. And he shut it down. He said, it's not malware, it's malware. Like Mao from China, malware. That's very, very good. So I just had to shout him out for that.
Man, puns and double entendre for days in this live chat.
No matter what, this show, you're always going to have puns and you're always going to have segues. So to segue back to the conversation of psychedelics. So a few different people said that they've had psychedelic experiences, but they haven't actually done any psychedelic drugs. And I think that's very interesting. The people who, because a psychedelic experience can happen without the use of drugs. Drugs is like a very guaranteed way of making it happen, or it's a way to have a very specific type of psychedelic experience. And if you want more information on that, I'd really recommend the book How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. He started out as a skeptic, but he went and he had a number of different experiences with different well-known psychedelic drugs, and he described his experience. And he left very persuaded of the potential future usefulness of psychedelics as a therapeutic for people who for all sorts of different reasons. People with people who are depressed, people who are facing a terminal illness, or even for other things, for like innovation and that sort of thing. Because it's the way that I've described it is that when you have a psychedelic experience, it's almost like your mind has a habit of thinking about things in a particular way, and it begins to create grooves, almost like the trails on a ski hill. So if you've ever gone skiing, snow skiing, and if you imagine Imagine that every single person who came up off the lift at the top always came off and their skis fell into these tracks and went and took the exact same route all the way down the hill. That's like what happens inside your brain. Your brain wants to create these tracks for your thoughts to always follow the same trajectory or the same path. And you have to be able to do like meta thinking, like thinking about your thinking and evaluating your thought process, because a lot of this happens just subconsciously. It's like if you're not looking at your brain while it's thinking, then it's going to be doing its thinking without you. So you have to turn your thinking back around and look at your own thinking, and you start recognizing that your brain follows these same paths all the time. So a psychedelic experience is almost like getting a huge dump of snow, like getting 7 feet of snow overnight, a big blizzard, and it completely covers all of those tracks. Now you come up and you get off at the lift at the top of the hill, and your skis can go anywhere. They can create any new track anywhere. And when you first experience that, it can be really, really terrifying, because what you don't realize is that your own ego begins to identify with those specific sets of thoughts that you always think. So this is why your own self-talk, what you tell yourself about yourself, will actually affect your own perception of yourself, because your brain will get used to thinking those thoughts until eventually they recede back into your subconscious, and your brain keeps telling you those same things. So if you're telling yourself, I'm a perpetual fuck up who's never going to get anything right, eventually that'll create a groove in your brain where your brain will keep thinking that even in the background while you're not focused on it. And so that your ego begins to be you, the collection of the thoughts that you always think, particularly the thoughts that you think about yourself. And when those get snowed over, when they get covered in snow and your brain suddenly can think any thought, you actually realize the sheer power of your brain. And you realize the extent to which you can create your own reality with the things that you think. And your brain can go, like, self-control is literally the ability to control your own thoughts. And if you don't have self-control, your brain is running on without you. And your brain is the most powerful tool that you have. So if you don't have self-control, if you don't have control over your brain can destroy you. So you need to have control over it so that it doesn't destroy you, so you control it. And a psychedelic experience then it winds up being very revealing to you about the nature of your own cognition, the way that you think about things, and how you this is why it's very good for habits, for getting rid of old habits or starting new habits, because a habit is just a groove in the snow, the skiing hill of your mind that you have just gone through so many times that it just happens naturally and you don't even think about it. If you cover over that groove, you can create a new habit. But that new habit is new. It's uncharted. You've never gone that way before. Your brain has never thought these thoughts before. It's completely uncharted territory, which can be terrifying, because now anything can happen. It's unpredictable. It can, it's when everything is predictable, you can predict that you're going to be safe. When suddenly everything is unpredictable, now you have to pay attention to every single little thing that happens, because there's potential danger embedded in every single thought that you think or every single thing that you do. So
I'd just like to thank Matthew for this very thinly veiled intervention that he's giving me right now. I sincerely appreciate it. You really are a sweetheart. Is there like a Fisher Price my first psychedelic experience outline that you'd give the supporting listeners group, in terms of just say someone might be inclined to probably really freak the fuck out because they absolutely have zero control over their mind, as a matter of fact. Do you have any like a prescription for that kind of a thing? And maybe some of these pussies in the chat who haven't done psychedelics either, but would be inclined to try it. It's called
Reach Out to Mike Brancadelli.
Yeah, no shit, huh?
Yeah. I think that I have mixed feelings about psychedelic drugs, but I do think they're definitely something that's going to get a lot more exploration over the next years, decades. And I think that on net, that's going to be a very good thing. So, yeah, it's, anybody who wants to know more can join the supporting listeners group, and we'll talk about it offline. So, okay. So back to this thread. So, one thing that you realize, the reason I asked if anybody else has had a psychedelic experience is because there is a phenomenon that you can have called a bad trip. When you have a bad trip, it can be the most horrifying, terrifying, overwhelming experience you've ever had. And it's fascinating to me because I've had a couple of bad trips, and both of them were I could 100% substantiate that each experience was simultaneously the best and worst experience of my life. Once you kind of experience that world, once you see things from the other side, so to speak, you start realizing how many paradoxes there are and out there, and you can appreciate that thing, that it would be the best and the worst experience of your life at the same time. It's hard to express to somebody when they haven't gone through it, but if you have, you'll recognize it, you'll understand that. But part of the reason why psychedelic experiences are so overwhelming is because the reason that your brain falls into these grooves, these habits, these constant ways of thinking, is because we don't have the capacity to survive in the world. We have to get resources. We have to protect ourselves. We have to get sleep. We have things we have to do every day. We have to look out for threats around us. We don't have the capacity to process all of the data that our senses are taking in. So when our faculties, as they evolve and as they mature throughout our life, what they're doing is they're actually closing off the majority of the data that they take in, that they actually process to you. Your subconscious mind gets all of it, but your conscious mind doesn't, because you can't take in and you wouldn't ever be able to concentrate if you heard every single sound that's around you, or you saw every single thing that's around you all at the same time. So like your vision is the clearest and the most high definition right in the very front of where you're looking. But anything out here is just kind of low res, and you don't really see it, and you don't really get all of that data in there, because you wouldn't be able to focus on something straight in front of you if you were equally looking at everything all around you. So the process of maturing is actually a process of forgetting. It's learning which data matter and which can be blocked out. So our sensory faculties, our smell, our sight, our hearing, our touch, all of these things are actually filtering mechanisms. And our brain learns how to throttle them up and down as necessary to be able to focus on just the things that matter, the things that are going to get us through each day, the things that are going to protect us from threats and protect us from danger. And you actually kind of implicitly recognize this a little bit, because if you're trying to listen to something really closely, you'll close your eyes. You close your eyes and you really, really try to focus in your hearing, because to focus on something, you have to eliminate input coming in from other areas. So this is what your senses are doing. Your senses are actually ratcheting down all of the input. But when you are participating in a psychedelic experience, often that sensory filtering goes away, and you just experience the full flood of all of the data, all of the input coming at you. So this is why people who are who have like done mushrooms or something like that, they'll report seeing things, and they're seeing like patterns in things, or they'll hear sounds, or they'll feel sensations that aren't actually there. It's because those are sensations or sights or sounds that are always around you. You're always being exposed to them, but you don't notice them because your sensory faculties have shut them off. So when those things get turned on, all of a sudden, then you remember it and you hear it and you feel it. So that's why psychedelics can be so overwhelming, because they'll override or disable your filters. So I said, how do we decide which data to focus on? Well, it's whatever is the most eminently threatening. This is the most adaptive thing. The people who focus on the most eminent threats are the people who survive. So the adaptive thing is that the people who are the best at focusing on eminent threats are going to be the ones who reproduce and create more people who are the best at focusing on eminent threats. Everything else gets filtered out. So then because our memory's not perfect, because we eventually forget things and we have so much data and so much input around us, so much sensory input around us, we eventually have to create shortcuts or institutions that we put up that contain ideas. So words are one institution that we create that will embed concepts in this word. So then we just have to, it's like the word is like a box and we put all this stuff inside the box and then we put a lid on it and a bow and we put it up on the shelf and we put a label on it. So then when I look at that label, that tells me, it reminds me of all the stuff that's inside that box. And so I don't have to think of every single thing that's inside the box. I just have to think of the label. That's what a word is for us. So we eventually collectivize all of these things into institutions. And we build all of this stuff, all this data that we're trying to keep track of all the time, we build it into a story. We take all of the most important, most eminently necessary information, and we put it into stories. So we build it. We build institutions. So we build institutions to outsource the energy occupied by our threat management systems to give ourselves the luxury of parsing other data. Because if I can build an institution and I can outsource so maybe I build a house. If I build a house that protects me and I put a lock on the door, now I don't have to worry about all the stuff that's around me outside. I don't have to worry about a bear coming and eating me or, whatever else. Maybe there's different things I have to be concerned about. I have to be concerned about running out of oxygen inside, but that's a less eminently threatening situation than the bear who's going to come walking around outside. Now that gives me the luxury to not have to think about those other things. I can put those thoughts out of my mind. I can let them recede back into my subconscious, and I can focus on like the next level of things that I need to think about. This is where you get Maslow's hierarchy from. As you resolve the lower level, you move to the next level. As you resolve that, you move to the next level and all the way up. So I said eventually we forget why those institutions existed. They've managed threats so well that we forget those threats exist. So to use the example of the house, you might eventually be like, why do I live inside this house? Like, I love the fresh air. I want to be able to look at the stars when I'm asleep. And so I built this house, but I don't want to live in this house anymore. I want to go back out and I want to live out in the woods. And so you'll go out and you'll live in the woods. And then the first night you're sitting there looking at the stars and all of a sudden you hear a bear walking by and you remember why you lived in the house. And you remember why you liked the house, and the purpose for it. Eventually we forget why those institutions existed. They've managed threats so well that we forget those threats exist. Yet our own capacity for sensing, evaluating, and managing those threats has atrophied from disuse. Because if I outsource the process of managing these different threats every day, if I've outsourced that to an institution, then the skill set that I had that I used to manage those threats before I outsourced them, that's atrophied. So if I'm responsible, if I have to engage in a sword fight every day to protect myself and my family, and then one day I hire a swordsman to take care of us, and that swordsman then engages in a sword fight every day, eventually, unless I engage in a sword fight every day anyways, eventually my ability to engage in a sword fight effectively and protect my family that way is gonna atrophy and fall away. So it might be that I hire this swordsman to take care of us, and then I stop managing sword play and I don't do it every day. And then eventually my son, he grows up and he has a swordsman, and then his next son, he grows up and he has a swordsman. And generations down the road, I get a great-great-grandson who's like, man, what do we have these swordsmen for? We don't even need them. Let's just get rid of them. And so they get rid of them, and then suddenly they realize, now I have to defend myself with a sword from this person who comes to attack me every day, and I don't know how. I've lost that ability. I don't know where to learn it. So this is kind of a silly example, but I'm using a really obvious example to try to illustrate this idea that we build out these institutions to manage situations for us. And if there is a ritual or a tradition that exists in our society, by definition, it's because our ancestors needed those rituals and traditions for specific reasons. They wouldn't have done them if they didn't need them. The adaptive rituals and traditions are the ones that survive because we're evolved for fitness. We're evolved for adaptiveness, for adaptation. So if you just take this ritual tradition, like, oh, I don't know what the purpose of that is, I'm just going to get rid of it, then you run the risk of exposing yourself to a threat that you don't know how to manage because you don't have the skill set anymore, because your ancestors created this ritual or this tradition for you so that you wouldn't need that skill set, because the ritual manages it better than, whatever other option you would have to manage it directly. So I said, so the destruction of quote unquote outdated institutions always presages the reemergence of ancient evils. When we have institutions and people get rid of them, like, oh, we don't need that anymore. Oh, we don't need church anymore. We don't need we don't need marriage. We don't need monogamy. We don't need whatever other institution. People just get rid of them. What they're doing is they're setting themselves up for the reemergence of an ancient evil, because for whatever reason, the reason that institution existed was because it fought back and held back ancient evils. And when you get rid of it, that evil is going to reemerge. Our ancestors knew how to deal with those evils, and they embedded that knowledge in tradition. So G.K. Chesterton had, there's a concept called Chesterton's fence. And what he said was, whenever you remove any fence, always pause long enough to ask why it was put there in the first place. And that's the perfect analogy for it. That fences are built to protect property. If you tear that fence down, you better be ready to protect that property, because if you aren't, someone's going to come take it from you. And that's a metaphor, obviously, for other things. But our friend Popular Liberty here, he said, the utility of all major religions is that every generation doesn't have to reinvent civilization over and over again. It's time travel technology, because religious truths can be faithfully transmitted for 5 to 6 millennia. Religion is time travel technology. I love the way he framed that. That's exactly what it is. And a religion and the people who build themselves around it, or that's a cult. Like, you can have a narrow definition of a cult, but everyone else be damned. I'm telling you the definition of cult that I'm using is one that would include a religion. A religion is a cult that formed around a specific idea, and they have sustained those ideas in the stories of that religion, so that they can pass it on from generation to generation, so that their children and their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren, and all of their descendants are equipped to be able to deal with whatever kind of evil that religion protects them from. So he said good religions function the same way flight stabilizers work on airplanes. If society ever loses an engine to chaos and democracy emerges, a religion can restabilize the social system by prescribing long-time preference coercing institutions for politically repelling whatever chaos has erupted. The reason that the state has taken over and dominated every single thing that we do, the reason why the cathedral, as people call it, the reason why it exists and is expanding and dominating is because it has outcompeted or out-adapted all the religions that held it back. And so this is where I'm an atheist libertarian, we don't need silly stuff like religions. Those guys are going to be just completely unequipped for what's to come. They have no answer, because they're going to either be adopted into the cult or they're going to be destroyed by the cult, unless they find a cult that they can identify with that has a more powerful, more adaptive idea that's better able to deal with the evils around them. Religions are threat avoidance mechanisms or threat management mechanisms. If you don't have one, then there's a particular set of threats and danger and evil that you are not equipped to deal with, that you're not equipped to manage, that you're not equipped to protect yourself from, that you're not equipped to protect your children from, if you have children. If you don't have children, I don't know what you're doing. Like, I don't know what you're here for. The reason that we exist is to pass on, is to prepare the world for the next generation, so that the next generation can build on the work that we've done. And religion is a key part of that. So there's a reason that Antonio Gramsci, the long run through the institutions guy, there's a reason that he said, in order to get communism to work, in order to achieve the revolution that we want, we're going to have to take out the church. We're going to have to take out the family. We're going to have to take out these institutions because those institutions were formed precisely to protect against communism. People may not have known what communism was back then, but communism is just a manifestation of a unique ancient evil. That evil is leftism. That evil is chaos. That's the reason that that religions, that families, that monogamy, that's the reason that these things were formed. The reason that they evolved as adaptive institutions, because they protected against those evils. As those institutions are being destroyed, those evils are going to reemerge. And if you want to do something about it, you're going to need to be a part of a more powerful institution. You're going to need to invest in the institutions that will protect against those things. So all the libertarians who are out there who act like they're too good for a church, or they're too good for, I don't need to get married, whatever. All of those people are going to find themselves on the outside eventually, because things are starting to get kind of hairy. Stephen was sharing with me someone who was theorizing about, or it wasn't even, I wouldn't even call it theorizing. I would call it prophesying, forecasting what is coming down the pike in terms of what we can learn from COVID lockdowns. Now that we know that climate change, according to this guy, the CNN guy that Project Veritas pantsed on secret camera, he's told us that the next big push from the cathedral is going to be climate change. So we had COVID. COVID created this new, established new premise for all these new, lockdowns and travel restrictions and all that sort of thing. So then, how do you think that they might apply that to climate change? Do you want to share some of the stuff that was being suggested?
Yeah, I got a little rundown here for you, and this is fun because it's just kind of fun to put things out there and look back and just see what was close or what was not close, and what came out and kind of had a little bit of a different flavor in terms of predictions and stuff like that. This is what we're dealing with, and I wonder what people's thoughts are, because it's fun just to sort of predict what might be coming down the pike there. All right, so we got lockdowns for the purpose of reducing pollution, and I think that has some supporting evidence out there, based on some of the first articles that were coming out after all these lockdowns were happening, talking about, oh, look at the greenhouse gases are fall, or whatever, however it pertains to climate change, whatever goofy articles that they were writing, that I just remember they existed, and it became very obvious that, oh yes, they are going to just try to apply this in the future. So when I think initially they thought that global warming was going to sort of be the golden goose for this, and people just, as much as people bought into it, they bought into it to the point of just like, no, I want like all the moral superiority of showing concern about climate change, and like, I can have like a hybrid car that might not have a particular reason to look like a spaceship, but I'm going to make it look like a spaceship so that people will know that I'm driving a hybrid. But in terms of, adjusting my lifestyle in any way, shape, or form, no, that's not going to happen. But, people set that precedent with this virus. That seemed to work. So now that they've already sort of, they've already gotten people to do this once, think maybe that they will be using that little muscle memory that they've created. Because you're talking about with the tracks and things like that, and thoughts, and now people, especially as time goes on and generations change, this is normal to some people. And if you've only lived a little bit of life, the percentage of life that you've lived before, like the ratio is going to be like closer to 1, in terms of like, this is normal. But so someone who's like your son's age, obviously, this is like, they were born into this being normal, right? It's so any way that we were used to living, that's like off the wall kind of to him. But you get someone who's like 10 years old, 12 years old, so on and so forth. It just changed like that. All right, so then we got restricted movement. for concerns of fossil fuel emissions, taxes on gas and or mileage. Yeah, I think that's already sort of happening. Rollout of vehicles that people can afford, like hybrid vehicles, and then it might be so cost prohibitive, for the gas guzzlers. I'm sure that's going to be a term that is that like all cars, not just like a big ass V8 truck or whatever, but just like a Honda Civic. It'd probably be like a gas guzzler.
Right, a car that depends upon fossil fuels to run, that uses fuel is going to be treated as they now have a precedent to treat it as this is an actual threat. If you're driving around a car like this, you're accelerating the threat of climate change.
Like a gun. Yeah, it's like walking around with like waving a gun.
Yep.
And I can already see kind of like like the exhausts, just like video of like the exhaust and sort of just how archaic it is. It'll be like equated to like the Flintstones or something like that.
I imagine that the way they probably would do it is they would probably create some sort of a fuel surcharge or fuel tax or something like that just makes it so fuel is $10 a gallon or something. So it's just not plausible for people to actually spend that and use a car like that.
Yeah, and like some even also like a term like anti-mask or anti-vaxxer or whatever. I'm sure there'll be one for someone who drives like a gas-powered vehicle. Small farm land grab. So with all like the new regulations on presumably on farming practices and equipment, so different standards that they have to abide, which obviously is going to just obviously be very expensive for small farmers. Who won't be able to comply with those regulations financially, eating up some of those, getting some of that remaining farmland.
You know who the number one farmland owner in the U.S. is, right?
I do, my buddy.
Yeah. Yep, your buddy.
Yep.
It's pretty convenient, so it's pretty easy to say, "Oh, you guys aren't compliant with the new fossil fuel standards or the new whatever standards." And because of that, you're going to be foreclosed on your property, or the bank's no longer going to service your loan, or whatever. And fortunately for you, you aren't going to be high and dry. Our dear friend, benevolent philanthropist Gil Bates, he is here to purchase your. Don't mind the mustache. He's just here to purchase your. He's a very friendly fellow. He just needs to buy your land from you. And he's going to pay you very fairly for it, and in return, you now are able to. There's this very helpful UBI that you can survive off of, and you don't even need your farm anymore.
Perfect. Yeah, and then so this is the last one that no one cares about, but more criminalization of peasant farming communities, and I think the basis for that one was tree removal. They use firewood to cook and such and such and such. But it'll be interesting to just kind of see into the future, how that all plays out, how close we are. But we can kind of reflect on that. But this is sort of coming from a smart person that I really look up to, who's sort of lot in life is finding all this stuff and sort of figuring out what's next. But like for sure, the first person I heard use the term Great Reset, months and months before it was sort of common, even in weird little circles like ours.
If you go look at the Great Reset, what they were talking about 5 or 6 years ago about the necessary parts of the Great Reset, and then you go look at Joe Biden's platform, it's like he just as if Joe Biden's the one putting together his platform. Right. But obviously, you know what I mean. It's obvious that he drew just directly from that plan. Joe Biden is the puppet for Davos, essentially, and Davos is using this opportunity. The Davos crowd are using this opportunity that's been granted to them by COVID to now. So it's like. Once the war was on the Soviet Union. Once the Soviet Union collapsed, they needed a new existential threat. So they got terrorism. So then you had a war on terrorism. Well, that's no longer really viable anymore. So they needed a new existential threat. So they got COVID. Well, now that's not really going to be viable anymore. So they need a new existential threat, which is going to be climate change. And you're going to see the exact same. There's going to be a Patriot Act for climate change, and it's going to it's going to be directed toward taking more and more control away from you and more money away from you and putting more money and control in the pockets of the already wealthy and well-connected. And it's going to continue creating this stratified society where you're going to have haves and you're going to have have-nots. There's going to be people that just can't abide by it. They're going to lose their business. They're going to lose their car. They're going to lose whatever else that they can't afford to keep up with all the new regulations and all the new taxes. And you're going to get people that they're going to do travel restrictions. I'm sure that they're going to do travel restrictions based on climate change. You're going to get an allotment of miles that you're allowed to drive a month, and you're going to have to report in your odometer, and you're going to get taxed on any miles that are over it, or something like that. There's going to be limited plane flights. You're only going to be able to do X number of flights per period of time, because we have to protect all of our we have to protect our precious climate from all of these. Only the commercial flights. The commercial flights are the ones that are really damaging the climate. Private jets are actually they run on super special fluid that it's what it is it's actually dinosaur juice. It's not oil, it's dinosaur juice that actually doesn't affect the climate. So it's really important that our leadership and all the most important people in the world, it's important that they're able to move quickly back and forth between all these conferences where they're informing everyone about the best way to behave going forward to protect our planet. And so it's important that they be able to use their dinosaur juice powered private jets. But the rest of us plebs who would use the oil guzzling, gas guzzling commercial jets, those are going to be restricted. And then obviously there's going to be other travel restrictions that are related to COVID. I don't want to use the specific phrase here because I don't feel like having to deal with getting another video unblocked. But it's they've created the formula. And so now once you realize that history is cyclical, that history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes, that happens on a large scale, and there's a fractal dynamic where it happens on a large scale and it happens all the way down on a small scale. It's going to repeat itself. Climate change, they've already told us, climate change is the next frontier. This is going to be the next existential threat, and you've got to plan accordingly. You've got to put yourself in a position where if you can't avoid it altogether, you have to make sure that this stuff has the least effect on your life possible. I don't know how to put it any other way than that. You're not going to control it. You're not going to protest your way out of it. The people who protest are going to be categorized as loonies, as crazy people. Not just crazy people, but people who are a threat. They're already establishing white supremacy. Another part of white supremacy is going to become climate denial. Anybody who's a climate denier is going to be a white supremacist. All of this is going to be put underneath that banner. This is the way that they operate. And the reason that this works is because the people who are bought into this are members of a cult. This is the cult of the corporate press, where they have told a story that's so compelling and believable to people that people have molded themselves around that story, and they're acting that story out. So it doesn't matter whether it's true or not. It's going to be made true by the people who are embodying it. And there's going to be enough of it. It doesn't have to be a majority. It doesn't even have to be a large, what's the word, plurality, a large plurality or whatever. It doesn't even have to be a large, it has to be just enough people who are just intolerant and aggressive enough that they can make it happen. And that's all that they need. And so, and they have that. So until we have any sort of alternative, any sort of viable alternative that facilitates the collapse of the regime, because the regime is not going to collapse until there's an alternative that can replace it. That's just the nature of it. The regime is the regime because it has the power to be. And until there's something else for that power to flow into, it's going to keep going as it is. So you can recognize that. I mean, once you learn these tricks about how human beings organize themselves and the way that people adapt themselves around stories, you can predict where it's going to go. You can recognize where it's going to go, and you can make sure that you, like Wayne Gretzky said, you're going to skate to where the puck is going to be rather than where it is now. And the problem with American right wing for a long time, libertarians and conservatives, has been that they keep skating to where the puck is right now, and they don't realize that puck is moving. That puck is moving, and it's moving faster. So our goal with this show here is to try to break some of this stuff down for you guys and help you guys understand or at least put all these ideas in one place that you can help communicate it to other people and get enough people. Ultimately, the numbers game is going to be the number of people who see this and recognize this and are ready to opt out. They recognize the futility of fighting the system and they're ready to just opt out and to create something new and to create the lifeboat that the rest of us can all jump in and just paddle our way furiously away from the sinking Titanic. Okay. My cousin speaks at Davos. Goddamn Salesforce commie. Salesforce freaks me out. That's what's his name? The CEO of Salesforce. He's the type of guy that I could see making a presidential run because he's a freaking ideologue. I shouldn't bring the name up if I don't know what it is. Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff. Yeah, that guy's a loon. I apologize, Rob. I'm sorry that you're trapped being related to someone like that. Just send him this episode. That should help. Cassandra Fairbanks retweeted me, and I think that got me too much attention. I was pretty aggressive on there. Nothing compared to what the commies do, but for our side, you know how it goes. He got banned. Rob got banned from Twitter. Sad. Are you able to create a new Twitter account? I don't know how that works. Like, I don't know if you get banned from Twitter. Like, do they target your IP address or something? Or can you create another one and just try to keep your head down? Amy doesn't like Russell Brunson from ClickFunnels. Russell Brunson is a very, very nice, respectable Mormon man. Mark Benioff, I would not be surprised if he drinks blood of. I was going to say, I wouldn't be surprised if he participates in some very bizarre occult ceremonies. I'll say that. Then I can't get sued.
That other people probably also participate in.
Yeah. Okay, DM me the Veritas video. All right, I'll go check it out, man. Anyways, this has been we're coming up on 2 hours here, and I've got other stuff. Amy really does not like Russell Brunson. ClickFunnels is the platform that we use for a lot of our websites and stuff with Jason's business. And Amy's the one who builds most of the web pages, and she does to do it through ClickFunnels. And ClickFunnels is very, very good for what it does do. And it's just it has just some of the most aggravatingly, it has just a bunch of really terrible things that it does that drive Amy crazy. And so she has to sit through Russell Brunson videos explaining how ClickFunnels works, and it makes her mad. So, okay. This has been another episode of King Pilled. Over there is Liberal Steve. You can find him on Twitter at Messina Inc. Join the supporting listeners group, and follow me on Twitter at Real King Pilled. Like and subscribe and share and do all that stuff. Right now it says there's 19 people watching. We've got 8 likes. So them's rookie numbers. Get your numbers up, people. Yeah. We'll see you guys on today's Thursday. We'll see you guys on Monday. And until then, toodaloo.